I've spent most of the night staring at the receivers, watching the signals disappear one by one. Channels I've been monitoring for years, military bands, aviation traffic, digital HF links, all started going quiet around 8 yesterday evening. I thought it was a solar event at first, but the ionosphere didn't flare. Everything just dropped. Silent. I tried realigning the antenna. Ran diagnostics on the system. No interference, nothing mechanical. The silence was real. By 10:15, I was tracking a data burst out of the Pacific, encrypted, staggered, routed through what looked like a fallback satellite. I couldn't decode it fully, but it was aimed at Barksdale, Offutt, and Whiteman, 3 of the main U.S. nuclear command bases. The payload size was massive, and it didn't loop. That's how I knew it wasn't an exercise. Exercises always repeat. Around 10:30, I heard 4 aircraft pass over my ridgeline at low altitude. No transponders, no identifiers, hugging the terrain tight. Not civilian, not even cargo. It was fast, maybe 2, 3 seconds of roaring engines, and they were gone. I grabbed the binoculars and saw them clear the west tree line, heading south by southwest. Dark bodies. I'm not sure what type, but they were too wide to be fighters. Long wings. Probably B-52s. That was when I knew. That was the moment I felt it in my chest. Something had changed. I sat in the shack with the power off. Just the dim red light from the control panel keeping me company. I waited. At 12:47 in the morning, the first visual confirmation came in. A ham operator out of Sitka broke through with a scattered signal. He said the horizon to the west lit up like dawn. Bright, rising, hot. Not a meteor. Not an explosion. He swore he saw the curvature of the blast. Said it was massive. Then his transmission cut mid-word. 2 minutes later, another operator out of Taipei confirmed what I already feared. Hypersonic launches had been detected off China's eastern coast. Targets: Guam, Okinawa, the Philippine Sea, and Diego Garcia. 5 strategic American military positions hit in the opening strike. No warning. No declaration. It was China. And they struck first. You need to understand something. This wasn't about oil. It wasn't about Taiwan or alliances or some tired rhetoric about national pride. This war started with economics, cyber infrastructure, and scarcity. Back in 2028, China completed its foothold in Central Africa. They secured exclusive contracts on every critical rare earth mine between Ethiopia and Zambia. Western analysts shrugged. The public didn't pay attention. But it was the nail in the coffin for our tech dominance. We still had the patents, the companies, the marketing. But we didn't have the minerals to make our own chips anymore. China did. They held the pipe and they squeezed. In 2029, the first artificial liquidity crisis hit. Beijing dumped synthetic neodymium into global markets at half the cost of American refinement, bankrupting 6 major tech producers in less than 3 months. The stock market plummeted. Washington responded with sanctions, tariffs, and threats. But the damage had already been done. American microchip independence collapsed. The Taiwan Strait incident followed not long after, and the U.S. lost the only non-mainland chip source it had left. That's when the black site projects ramped up. The Pentagon started funding emergency mass production in places like Arizona and New Mexico. But the Chinese had already infiltrated those networks years earlier. The cyber attack on the Treasury's real-time payment systems in 2031? That was China testing its deeper hooks. People think nuclear war comes in one day. It doesn't. It creeps, quietly. By the time you notice the rot, it is already in your lungs. I heard the retaliation order come through on the fallback channel at 2:16 this morning. They used the phrase, Alpha Green confirmed. That was it, just 3 words. After that, no more chatter. But that's all it took. We fired back. Not from land bases. The U.S. retired half its silo network after budget cuts in 2030, but from sea. The submarines, the boomers, silent and patient, and always waiting. 4 Ohio-class boats launched from the Philippine Basin, 12 MIRV warheads each. Reports confirm that strikes landed in Guangzhou, Shanghai, Qingdao, and near Beijing itself. Casualty estimates already exceed 200 million. I keep reading the number and it still doesn't register. My signal strength started dropping around 3 a.m., not because of interference, but because the sky itself began changing. The upper layers of the atmosphere were reacting to the high-altitude bursts. Aurora activity spiked in the west, then dropped again. Something about it felt wrong, like the sky was disoriented. I lost contact with the Alaska band around that time, too. At 4:30, I finally received the nationwide civilian alert. Not via phone, not by emergency alert system. That was already dead. It came over a scrambled AM carrier signal routed through an analog relay I had rigged years ago to catch ghost frequencies. It said, "Strategic deterrence failure confirmed. National strike underway. All civilians are advised to shelter in hardened locations. Avoid target zones. Remain off highways. Engage in self-rescue. Broadcast only when secure." I sat there in silence for almost 10 minutes, reading that sentence over and over. Strategic deterrence failure. That's not the kind of language they use lightly. It means the system failed. The idea that kept peace for over a century, mutual assured destruction, is over. The safeguards didn't work. Cheyenne Mountain hasn't transmitted since midnight. Buckley Field is presumed destroyed. I haven't heard a whisper from NORAD East or Raven Rock. Washington may already be hit. I don't know. The East Coast bands are dead, not jammed, just gone. One operator from Fort Collins broke through the interference a couple hours ago. He identified himself as Jonathan Lee, a civil engineer, said he was with his family and several others in a commuter tunnel northeast of Denver. He reported a bright flash in the north sky, far horizon. Said the power died instantly. The air turned thick. He believed Buckley got hit. He told anyone listening to head for elevation and stay underground if possible. His voice broke at the end. I think he had a kid with him. I tried to respond, but the signal faded. That was 2 hours ago. I haven't heard anything since. I need to make something clear. I am not a military analyst. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not even a survivalist in the purest sense. I'm a former systems technician who saw the writing on the wall after 2025, when we nearly lost the national grid during the solar filament scare. I came up here to build something that didn't rely on luck. This cabin was my project for 8 years. It's EMP hardened, insulated against thermal radiation, and stocked for long-term isolation. It has independent power, solar with battery arrays and a backup diesel cycle, and a passive air filtration system routed underground. I built this place because I knew someday something was going to break so badly the rest of the country wouldn't know what hit them. That day is today. If you're still hearing me, here's what you need to do. If you're above ground near a city, you have to leave. Not tomorrow, not later. Now. Radiation patterns move fast and unpredictably in early winds. Fallout is already in the jet stream. If you're anywhere within 100 miles of a major metro area, even if it hasn't been hit, get to elevation and find shelter you can seal. If you have potassium iodide, take it. If you don't, wet a cloth and wrap it over your mouth and nose when you move through open air. Boil all water unless you're pulling it from sealed containers. Avoid lakes and rivers near the strike zones. Do not trust rescue broadcasts unless you can verify the signal origin. There are going to be false flag transmissions, possibly automated, possibly hostile. Some of them might be foreign. Some of them might be rogue American. The government command structure is probably shattered. Assume you're on your own until proven otherwise. I will stay on this frequency, 7.400 megahertz, for as long as I can maintain power. This transmitter is analog. It runs through a grounded copper cage and is shielded from interference. I've got enough power to keep it live 12 hours a day for the next year if I conserve. I'll begin broadcasting again at 9 in the morning, Mountain Time. My next report will include observed fallout drift, triangulated survivor signals, and any updates from fallback relay stations. If you're hearing this, you are not alone. but the world you remember is gone. We are living in the beginning of something else, something we are not ready for. It's 9:13 in the morning, and the sky outside has gone gray despite the clear forecast. I can't tell if it's smoke or upper atmosphere dust from the coastal impacts, but the sunlight has that milky cast to it now. Flat, dim, diffuse. Nothing sharp. My wind turbine is spinning slowly. No gusts yet, but the weather station says pressure has dropped 2 points in the last hour. I don't like that. Fallout drift usually rides behind pressure changes. I spent the past 4 hours scanning for anything beyond static, anything traceable. I managed to catch a part of a broadcast out of Canada, what's left of the CBC emergency feed. It wasn't government, it sounded like a technician, maybe in a remote station reading from a printout. He mentioned Ottawa and Toronto are unresponsive. Halifax took in several thousand refugees from Maine overnight. Vancouver is being held under martial law. No mention of impacts, but the way he said it made me think that means Vancouver's still on the list. Just not hit yet. No new word from the east coast of the U.S. That entire side of the continent might be out of the loop now, either knocked off the grid or silenced by secondary strikes. If Washington is gone, and I suspect it is, that explains the lack of federal fallback. Continuity of government likely failed, and if Raven Rock didn't light up its spectrum, it's probably buried or destroyed. Before I get to the new maps I've drawn and the fallout drift predictions, I want to back up. I want to talk about how we got here. I don't mean the headlines you've seen over the last year. Balloon incidents, naval skirmishes, sanctions, tit for tat. I'm talking about the real sequence, the forgotten sparks that lit this thing under our feet. The first real signal was in 2026. It started in Kashmir. India and Pakistan had been playing brinksmanship there for decades, but this time was different. A water dispute escalated into a full standoff after a Chinese-built dam diverted a tributary feeding into Pakistan's breadbasket. That alone would have been enough to trigger protests. But then 2 Indian patrols went missing and drone footage surfaced. Blurry, low-res, but enough to show bodies near the river bend. Pakistan denied involvement. India blamed them anyway. China called it a regional misunderstanding. The United Nations tried to step in. Nothing worked. What no one covered was the real deployment. By the middle of 2027, China had rotated 20,000 infrastructure defense units into northern Pakistan under the guise of guarding belt and road initiative routes. Those troops weren't engineers. They were paramilitary, light armor, mobile missile platforms, encrypted comms. Their presence shifted the entire tactical balance. India responded by placing Agni-series missile systems in the Himalayas and expanding its S-band radar footprint. That standoff never broke into open war, but it put everyone on a hair trigger. The next flashpoint was Africa. Most Americans ignored it, but in 2028, a proxy conflict exploded in the Mineral Triangle between Zambia, the DRC, and Angola. Chinese state-backed firms using private security companies made up of former Russian and Sudanese contractors began forcefully displacing local populations near cobalt and coltan sites. A few United Nations peacekeeping forces tried to intervene. That's when the drones came in. American-built loitering drones, marked as stolen, were used to strike Chinese convoys. The videos were plastered across Beijing's social media before they were pulled. The Chinese public believed it was a direct U.S. attack. The Chinese government issued a statement claiming it was mercenary sabotage, but they quietly passed an internal war powers expansion the same week. No one in the West noticed. But I did. That was when I started recording everything. Then came 2029, the global financial seizure. It started with shipping. China began restricting titanium and rare earth exports, not banning them outright, just slowing paperwork, introducing new inspections, environmental compliance delays. The supply chain took a hit. American manufacturing flinched. Tech stocks plummeted. Artificial intelligence models began hallucinating because server farms couldn't replace failing chips fast enough. Public trust eroded. Emergency acts were passed, but they were all too late. The breaking point? Digital currency depegging. The Chinese central bank, without warning, fully untethered their coin from the global synthetic basket and began issuing credit directly to nations participating in BRI. That included Brazil, Nigeria, parts of Eastern Europe. The United States lost control of the petrodollar almost overnight. Military budgets froze, veterans went unpaid, 100,000 reservists were cut loose. This was the setup for the global fracture. The military conflict that followed was already in motion. Russia, watching from the sidelines, used the chaos to test the waters. They deployed 2 battalions into Lithuania under the banner of Joint Slavic Security Operations. NATO hesitated. Germany had no fuel. France was still reeling from the Sen reactor incident. The United Kingdom didn't want to move without U.S. support. The Baltic states screamed, but no one acted. So Russia stayed. The map shifted again. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, the Philippines requested missile defense support after Chinese island building resumed near the Scarborough Shoal. U.S. naval forces responded with patrols. Then came the incident. An American P-8 Poseidon aircraft was buzzed by a Chinese fighter and forced to divert. No weapons fired, but it breached a 50-mile boundary and entered Taiwan's Adas. The Chinese accused the United States of attempting to bait them into war. The headlines covered it for 3 days, then forgot. But that's when I started seeing the infrastructure move. China began shifting its satellite constellations. Surveillance units were repositioned. 4 new low-orbit arrays were launched under the name Harmony Sky. Their declared purpose was weather modeling. But every amateur radio astronomer out there noticed something was off. The beams were directed, not broad, pinpoint, and they were transmitting in low VLF, frequencies only used by submarines. That's when I started scanning all bands. I noticed U.S. traffic patterns shifting too. Strategic bombers started cycling again out of bases in Louisiana and Missouri. Naval deployments changed course mid-patrol. Aircraft carriers began ghosting their routes. All this before a single missile flew. By the time the headlines declared a crisis in 2032, most of us in the signal world already knew we were on borrowed time. The war had already started. Not with nukes, not with tanks, but with silences. With missing satellites. With cut fiber lines and 1,000 minor flickers no one noticed. And now here we are. The actual launch came as a surgical operation, not a barrage. China's first strike hit strategic U.S. military infrastructure in the Pacific: Guam, Diego Garcia, Okinawa. High-value airfield supply hubs and communications installations, not cities, not civilians. They wanted to cripple our ability to retaliate conventionally. But we didn't wait. We struck back immediately. Our submarines were already positioned in the South China Sea. The retaliation came within minutes. Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, all hit. Not warning strikes, not tactical, strategic-level weapons, multi-warhead platforms. 8-figure casualties in the first hour. India launched shortly after. Not at China, not at Pakistan, but at military staging zones in Tibet. That broke open the Himalayan front. Pakistan, assuming it was next, launched at Indian air bases. The Saudis activated their shield grid, probably assuming Israel would react, and Israel always reacts. No one's in control anymore. It's a cascade. Every nation with a stake is acting unilaterally. And the civilian world, the ordinary people, they're just trying to get through the day without turning to ash. Let me give you what I've got on fallout. The wind's blowing northeast from the Pacific coast. Based on high-altitude wind charts from before the strikes, the prevailing flow is carrying particles from the Guam and Diego Garcia blast northward toward Alaska, and then sweeping east into western Canada and the northern U.S. by tomorrow. Montana's edge might be spared the worst, but the Dakotas and Minnesota won't. I would expect moderate to heavy fallout to reach the Great Lakes region within 24 hours if the winds stay constant. If you're anywhere near these zones, seal your vents. Get underground if you can. Do not rely on HEPA filters unless they're rated for radioactive particulates. Dust exposure will kill more people than the blasts. Trust me. The air here smells faintly of burned copper this morning. That's not something you notice unless you've lived away from cities for years. The trees are quiet. No birds since dawn. Just the occasional whine of the turbine and the background hum of low-frequency static coming through the antenna. I haven't eaten yet. I don't feel hungry. I keep going over every click of the dials, every frequency band, like I'm afraid I'll miss something important. But most of what I hear now is just distortion, interference patterns, shortwave ghosts, or the last dying words of stations I'll never trace. I'll keep listening, I'll keep recording, and I'll keep reporting until I can't anymore. Next update will be this evening, unless something major happens before then. If you're alive and hearing this, write down what I'm telling you. Share it, transmit it, relay it any way you can. History isn't going to survive in servers anymore. We are the memory now. The morning's gotten colder than it should be. Not in the usual mountain way, this feels different. The air is still, and even though it's September, there's a bite that wasn't here yesterday. I stepped out with a respirator mask to check the turbine and found ash clinging to the western railing. Not thick, not black, pale gray, light enough to float. I touched it with a gloved hand. It smeared like fine powder. I brought it inside, ran a radiation check. It's active, low levels but rising. I'm 60 miles from the nearest city, and even up here the dust is coming in. That means we're already in the outer fallout cone from the Pacific strikes, which also means the wind's carrying inland faster than expected. I updated the fallout maps I started yesterday. Based on this ash pattern, the primary jet stream's pushing northeast, but a lower band is looping through Idaho and into northern Wyoming. If you're in Billings, Missoula, Pocatello, you need to be sealing everything now. Not tomorrow, not in a few hours, right now. I picked up new activity on the emergency bands, shortwave, not satellite. Someone out of Pierre, South Dakota, was rebroadcasting a Red Cross message. It was pre-recorded. Female voice. Clipped, flat, artificial. Mobile aid stations being established along I-90 and I-29 for short-term triage. Please remain in vehicles. Assistance will arrive shortly. I traced the signal strength. It was a repeater, not original. Which means someone is rebroadcasting ghost messages from abandoned protocols. Don't trust those, not unless you can verify the source. If you're hearing offers of triage points in the open or drive-through style aid stations, assume it's either an old feed or bait. Desperate people will chase hope, and someone will be waiting when they arrive. Food supply chains are collapsing. This was always going to happen first. I spent the last hour scanning the VHF trucking frequencies. The chatter is chaos. Most fleet trucks shut down after the first missile alert. Some drivers tried to return home. Others were rerouted by dispatch into so-called secure zones, which likely don't exist anymore. A man out of Flagstaff was broadcasting on loop about empty distribution centers. Said 2 big warehouses were looted and burned when the local police walked off the job. The thing you need to understand about modern logistics is this. Our cities only have about 72 hours of food, less if panic clears the shelves. When trucks stop, it's over. There's no warehouse fallback, no backup reserves. Just-in-time delivery was always brittle. The moment things stopped being just-in-time, the system cracked. I heard someone, woman, probably in her 30s, transmitting from a truck stop near Cheyenne. She said people showed up waving signs that read Safe Exchange and Share Supplies. When drivers pulled in, they were mobbed. Some didn't make it out. She made it through the back road and switched to her own rig's CB antenna. Her last message was, "I'm not stopping again. I'm headed west and staying moving until I'm out of fuel or breath." Then her signal faded into static. The civilian infrastructure isn't just broken, it's vanished. What remains is scavenging and small pockets of improvised control. I intercepted a shortwave relay between 3 operators in Kansas, each running local repeater networks. They're coordinating resource drops between towns still on backup grid power. The conversation was tense. 2 of the locations had already been raided. They spoke about setting up armed checkpoints, deciding who gets access to the well water, arguing over whether to take in evacuees from Missouri. This is how it begins. Not with bombs, but with the slow disintegration of trust. People revert. Scarcity forces it. In the absence of law, every survival decision becomes tribal. Who gets medicine? Who gets light? Who gets to speak into the radio and call for help, and who gets shut out? The lack of any official government signal has turned the airwaves into rumor mills. A dozen voices competing with half-finished ideas, secondhand reports, and panic. Some are trying to be helpful. Others are pushing false information, maybe on purpose. I heard one feed claiming the United States has launched a second strike at Iran. Another said Russian submarines surfaced off Alaska. One even claimed Florida was underwater. None of those have been confirmed. Ignore anything without a source. Stick to observable facts. Observe the sky. Smell the air. Track the wind. Listen to the real signals, not the loud ones. I want to tell you about something I picked up this morning that I haven't been able to explain. A low-frequency signal, barely audible, started repeating in the 400 kilohertz band, somewhere above the AM spectrum. It's not a language. It's not Morse. It's a pulsating code, too regular to be static, but not matching any known beacon format. I logged the pattern. 1 second burst, 4 second gap, repeat. I triangulated its direction. Due southeast. That lines up somewhere between Colorado Springs and Amarillo. It could be a repeater malfunction. Could be underground equipment failing. But the signal has no modulation. It's raw. Almost digital, without content. I'm going to keep tracking it. If it changes, I'll let you know. But if you're in that region, pay attention. If you hear it on your band, record it. Log the time and signal strength. I don't think it's a military beacon, and if it is, it's not one I recognize. Now, let's talk burn patterns. So far, the confirmed U.S. impact zones include San Diego, naval base targeted, civilian casualties estimated in the tens of thousands, airstrike confirmed. Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska, strategic target hit during the night, fallout plume expected to spread over Iowa and western Illinois. Norfolk, Virginia, still unconfirmed, but satellite blind spots and signal loss suggest a strike. Seattle and Portland. No confirmed hits, but all radio signals have ceased in both metros, either silent or under full evacuation. It's worth remembering that not all targets were cities. Command and control hubs, naval infrastructure, radar facilities, even relay towers, these were prime. But many of those are near cities, so even if the intent was strategic, the civilian casualties are immense. The Canadian border is seeing some of our refugees already. A ham from Manitoba reported 200 vehicles stopped on a back highway. No official processing centers, just people sitting in their cars hoping the radiation didn't follow them north. The border guards, according to the report, were unarmed, confused, and trying to manage with paper maps. They weren't told anything. They just saw the flashes and got static on their comms. There's something eerie about how quiet the air is up here. Usually, this time of year, I hear deer in the distance, the crows picking at roadside kills, but nothing today. Just the wind, the occasional creak of the antenna mount, and the low hum of the inverter running on battery. The ash has started coming down heavier. Not falling exactly, it drifts, lazy and random, like the sky can't decide if it wants to let go. I sealed the last vent hatch 2 hours ago. If you're anywhere with outside air intake, now is the time to shut it down and move to filtered recirculation. If you don't have a filter system, use layered cloth, wet if possible, and keep it close to the floor. The particles settle lower and still air. The next problem we face, besides water, besides heat, besides staying clean, is psychological. There are already voices out there turning people inward. I heard a channel out of Utah preaching that the strikes were divine punishment, another feed in Texas calling for cleansing zones. Language like that turns fast. People panic, and they want someone to blame. Keep your humanity. It's the only thing that'll survive long term if we make it through this. I'll continue broadcasting every 4 to 6 hours depending on signal strength and generator load. I'll be listening to 7.400 megahertz continuously, And if you've got information, anything real, anything useful, I'll rebroadcast it. Keep your power low. Keep your transmissions brief. Conserve your batteries. And stay off open bands unless you're ready for someone to trace your signal. I'll return before sunset. This isn't over, not even close. The silence didn't happen all at once. It came in layers. First were the delays, those odd lags in transmissions you'd normally chalk up to signal scatter. Then the noise. Frequencies once clean were filled with echo, hiss, and bursts of distortion. Finally, the gaps. Whole blocks of the spectrum just went dark. No emergency chatter, no news relays, not even amateur signals trying to punch through. By mid-morning, entire cities had vanished from the air. At first, I thought maybe it was jamming. That used to be a common assumption. The Cold War taught us to expect information blockouts during conflict, but this wasn't tactical suppression. This was death. One by one, we lost them. New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Tokyo, London, Delhi, Istanbul, Sao Paulo. Not by signal failure, not by power outages, by impact. I got partial confirmation from a relay operator outside Edmonton. He had a relay board that auto-recorded satellite bands on loop. The last 10 seconds before the U.S. communication array went dark showed a rapid sequence missile launch from 3 separate vectors, ocean, land, and low orbit. These weren't tactical strikes. They were designed to end everything. New York took at least 2 warheads, one directly on Manhattan, the second somewhere in northern New Jersey. Estimated death toll, over 8 million in the first 3 minutes. Secondary fires spread as far north as Westchester, infrastructure incinerated. Radiation bloom confirmed by the amateur meter out of Syracuse. No formal broadcasts have come out of the city since. Los Angeles vanished more suddenly. The last report I heard came from a man on a ham rig stationed near Lancaster. His signal was weak but clear. He said he saw the sky flash to the south like a second sun. The pressure wave shattered the windows where he was, even 70 miles out. Then nothing. The LA emergency broadcast station never activated. All signs suggest it was vaporized before any alert could even trigger. Chicago. That one hurts. I was born there, grew up near Logan Square. I haven't lived in the city for over 20 years, but it still feels like home in some part of me. I caught a faint signal from a private band operating on a shortwave rooftop station west of the city. The operator, older guy, said the downtown core lit up in seconds. One detonation hit the lake shore, the other further inland, possibly targeting O'Hare or the reserve command post on the west side. He didn't finish the report. His voice dropped mid-sentence, then static. Some cities didn't even get hit directly, but were still wiped out by proximity. Boston's core may have survived, but fallout from strikes on naval assets to the south is pushing radioactive dust into the metro area. Hospitals are overwhelmed, but even that's a generous word. No power, no communications, no outside aid. Medical staff are working in the dark with dwindling supplies, trying to treat third-degree burns and radiation sickness with gauze and bottled water. Tokyo is confirmed gone. The initial flash was picked up by several military satellites before their own system shut down. Japan's own early warning network issued a brief alert, just 3 words in Japanese, Kaku Kogeki Keti, nuclear attack. Confirmed. Then it cut. I've heard nothing from Hokkaido, Osaka, or Nagano since. That was 14 hours ago. London's fate is less clear. All Royal Navy command frequencies have gone dark. Heathrow recorded mass traffic movement on thermal imaging 2 hours before the presumed strike, suggesting a partial evacuation. But there's been no communication since. The UK Home Office building was believed to be a fallback command center, but even that line has been quiet. No confirmation yet whether Downing Street survived, but based on patterns, it's unlikely. In India, Delhi was targeted first, followed by Mumbai. I managed to pick up a fractured civilian relay from the outskirts of Jaipur. The woman on the other end spoke calmly. Her English was broken but clear enough. She said, "Flashes came from the horizon. All people are sick now. Eyes are burned. We cannot go to city. The animals are running toward the hills. She cried once, then apologized. "I'm sorry to talk long. Please tell others what we see." And I am. I'm telling everyone who's still out there. The world's largest cities, the ones with names we all know, the ones on airport billboards and song lyrics on tourist t-shirts, are either gone or dying. The people are either dead or becoming something else under radiation and dust and heat. There's no undoing this. The chain reaction is complete. And yet, despite the collapse, something strange is happening. I've begun hearing whispers of new coalitions. Fragile, temporary, born out of sheer desperation, but coalitions nonetheless. Russia and Iran, longtime rivals in subtle ways, have reportedly agreed to a ceasefire and are dividing supply corridors in the Caucasus. India and Australia have exchanged encrypted humanitarian messages through submarine-to-shore relays. Even fractured European states, Poland, Finland, parts of the old Balkans, are coordinating defensive zones through landline-only command bunkers. These are not alliances in the old sense. These are pacts of necessity. You don't shoot me, I don't shoot you. We share food if you don't raid my convoy. The kinds of understandings men only form when the world is ash and the next winter promises no warmth. I've tracked 3 such messages so far. One from Hungary. What remains of its government is offering energy in exchange for grain. One from Argentina. They want to establish a southern port relay for whatever is left of the International Red Cross. And one from Nigeria, calling for neutral ground status in the West African corridor. I don't know how many people are receiving these. I don't know if they'll hold, but the fact that anyone is still trying, that matters. What's completely gone is global coordination. The United Nations ceased all broadcasts 14 hours ago. Their Geneva and New York branches are presumed destroyed. NATO is non-responsive. The last official message I heard was an automatic failover from Brussels, simply stating, NATO strategic integration has failed. National command initiatives in effect. In other words, everyone's on their own. I've been getting messages from individual people too. Not governments, not military. Just voices. From farms. From fallout shelters. From truck stops with diesel generators barely clinging to life. One man in Wyoming says he has a water filtration rig and will share it if anyone can bring antibiotics. A woman in rural Oregon says she has chickens and no ammo. A kid from Nebraska says his dad is sick and he's trying to learn how to use the radio by reading a manual. These are the new voices of the world. And then there's the silence. Some cities didn't even send a final signal. They just vanished. No flash, no scream, no farewell, just gone. Like someone unplugged the soul of the place. Atlanta, Jakarta, Berlin, Cairo. Even Tel Aviv, which always managed to hold on during past wars, has said nothing in nearly 12 hours. It's the silence that unnerves me most. I keep thinking about how fast it all fell. The global structure we lived under for 100 years, a web of trade, conflict, espionage, and diplomacy, shattered in a matter of hours. And now we're left trying to speak into the void, hoping someone hears us over the roar of radiation, the collapse of cities, and the rustle of ash over dead streets. It's almost evening now. The air is colder again. There's frost on the edges of the windows that wasn't there before. It's not winter yet. But I think winter is coming early this year. A nuclear winter, maybe. Or just the kind where no one has fuel and the power stations are dust. I'll stay on the air. I'll record. I'll relay. I'll keep speaking until my breath runs out or the batteries run dry. It's just after 7 in the evening and the wind outside is hollow now. Sharp gusts, each one scraping across the walls like something searching for a way in. Temperatures down to 38 degrees Fahrenheit, unseasonably low for this part of Montana. I walked the southern perimeter before dusk to check for damage and found patches of frost forming on the exposed pipe behind the cabin. That's the earliest I've ever seen ice here. Radiation does strange things to the atmosphere. It changes the sky's patterns, makes the world forget how to behave. While the cold creeps in, the war escalates. I spent most of the afternoon listening to scrambled military frequencies, sifting through encrypted packets from fading satellites, and watching what's left of the satellite internet feeds before Starlink started flickering in and out. If you still have any terminal with connectivity, use it now. Share what you see, because soon, even those eyes in the sky will go dark. Let me walk you through what I've confirmed. Naval warfare is back. Not in the old sense of carrier fleets in proud formation, but in shadows and teeth. Submarines are now the kings of the sea. Most of the U.S. surface fleet was knocked out or scattered in the Pacific. I got a transmission from a civilian deckhand on a research vessel off the Aleutian Islands who saw 2 American destroyers fire missiles toward the horizon, then vanish beneath the waves 10 minutes later. He said they were running silent, fast and low, probably trying to avoid detection from Chinese drones. Their destinations were never identified, but someone was still fighting out there. China's submarine fleet is active in the Indian Ocean. Several independent operators from Australia and the Philippines have confirmed sonar contact, stealth vessels cruising past known oil channels. The Chinese aren't just defending, they're launching. Mobile sea platforms have been spotted near the Bay of Bengal and east of Madagascar. The assumption was always that their first strike would be tactical, but they've gone strategic, full payloads. The destruction isn't contained, it's planetary. The Russian Navy has surfaced near the Norwegian coast, not near a port, near the underwater cable hubs. 2 days ago, I mentioned something about missing bandwidth and signal degradation. That wasn't a glitch. They've started cutting the undersea cables. There are reports of fiber optic lines severed between Greenland and Ireland, and from the Arctic shelf down to Iceland. Data isn't just disappearing, it's being erased at the root. The backbone of global communication has always been physical. Glass strands stretching across the sea floor, unprotected, out of sight. All it takes is a single team, a submersible, and a bolt cutter to silence a continent. Now multiply that by 10. As if that weren't enough, multiple oil platforms in the South China Sea and the Gulf of Mexico have been seized. Chinese forces took control of at least 2 deep-sea rigs formerly owned by multinational corporations. I intercepted short VHF emergency beacons from one of them, rig Delta 49er. Last message. They're on board. We've locked the core. We're flooding the lower deck. Do not respond. Do not respond. The message repeated 3 times, then went silent. That was 22 minutes ago. All this isn't just destruction, it's strangulation. A methodical erasure of modern life's arteries, fuel, fiber, food, and firepower. What's left behind is only panic. Non-nuclear countries are collapsing under the weight of it. Argentina has shut its borders. Kenya declared martial law this morning. Chile has begun conscripting its national police into defense units. The governments of Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria have fallen silent. South Africa's energy grid has failed, and their emergency coordination hub hasn't responded to pings in over 6 hours. Even countries that stayed out of the direct conflict are burning from within. This is the self-destruction phase, the part where desperation erases order. Food runs out, communication ends, authority fades, and the only thing left standing is violence. Riots are happening in places that weren't even attacked. Zurich, Bangkok, Mexico City, Seoul. Hundreds dead. Not from bombs, but from stampedes. From fire. From walls collapsing under crowds. I heard a broadcast from a rooftop operator in Tel Aviv. She said, "We haven't been hit, but it doesn't matter. The people think we have. The panic alone is worse than a weapon." Russia has begun striking NATO-aligned targets that were left untouched in the first wave. Not capitals, not military bases. Infrastructure, dams, fuel depots, supply bridges. I intercepted a French relay confirming the destruction of the Saint-Avold refinery and sabotage at the Paluel nuclear station. No explosion, just internal systems overload. Either sabotage or a pre-programmed worm. Either way, the site is offline. And NATO? Useless. The alliance was designed for deterrence, not reaction. By the time the first nukes flew, no one knew who was still in charge. Command nodes scattered, protocols jammed, airspace contested. One operator out of Prague said it best: "We're just acronyms now, not armies. Empty uniforms with no uplink." Europe is being torn apart in days. France is under siege from within. Militias forming in the countryside. Germany's power grid has failed in the Western Corridor, and hundreds of thousands are trying to flee into Poland, which is barely holding its eastern line. Italy has closed its ports entirely. Scandinavia remains online but isolated, and some of their officials are now negotiating independently with Moscow just to keep fuel flowing. The dream of unity died in less than a week. Tonight, I had to make a choice I didn't expect. Two people showed up near the perimeter fence at dusk. No lights, just voices. Quiet, desperate. A man and a woman. He said he'd been listening to my broadcast for 3 days, triangulating the signal the old-fashioned way with a handheld loop antenna. I didn't ask how he got past the forest roots or how they avoided the traps. I just let them in. They're in the lower cabin now, wrapped in thermal blankets, eyes hollow. The woman hasn't spoken much. The man's name is Thomas. He worked at a telecom station before it went offline. Said he still had partial satellite link through an improvised panel rig, which is how he picked up the old NOAA emergency satnets. That's where most of his news came from. He confirmed what I suspected. The satellite relays are flickering, but still passing data bursts. Government access has been locked out in most countries, but private terminals, if configured manually, can still pull low-priority packets. It's like watching the world end through a keyhole. No video, no rich media, just burst packets, text, numbers, the last heartbeat of a dying system. It's from this data that I learned about the next round of strikes. Russia's targeting industrial centers, China's hitting ports. The United States has returned fire, but with less coordination. They're hitting fuel sources, not cities, trying to choke supply instead of going for kill counts. But civilian casualties are still climbing. We are well past the 10 million mark. That number is weeks old now. We may be at 50. Every hour, more cities vanish from the map. Every day, fewer people respond. Every broadcast feels more like a whisper across a burning field. I've always believed that radio would outlast the world. Not because of nostalgia, but because it doesn't need the world to function. It doesn't need towers, subscriptions, passwords, or satellites. It just needs a coil, a current, and a voice. I'm not the only one who thinks this. There are more of us out there. Operators, hams, people who never stop believing in the signal. We're building a network. Slowly. Quietly. The grid is dead, but the wave still carries. If you're listening, stay on the analog bands. 7.400 megahertz is my anchor frequency, but I scan others. Rotate your bands. Listen at sunrise and dusk. That's when the skip is best. If you've got a signal, share it. If you've got information, send it. If you've got nothing else, just breathe into the mic so we know you're still here. I'm going to get some rest. Thomas is watching the band tonight. I don't know if we'll pick up anything new, but I trust him. He's tired, but steady. That's all we can be now. Steady. I'll broadcast again in the morning, if the sky stays above us and the world hasn't finished the job yet. It's morning again. Cold. The sun broke through a narrow slit in the eastern cloud cover about 20 minutes ago, but the light was dim and filtered, with a reddish tint I've never seen this early in the day. The Geiger counter ticked twice per second when I took a sample of the frost on the windowsill. Low-level contamination. Not lethal yet, but climbing. Air intakes still shut. No exterior venting. The turbine is sluggish. Probably frost on the blades. But we've got enough battery reserve to last the day. Thomas stayed up most of the night rotating the bands. He caught something strange around 3 in the morning. Satellite pings. Not civilian, not broadcast. They were low-priority telemetry packets from a surveillance system that used to belong to a weather monitoring constellation before the war began. Now, whoever controls the uplink is using it to send down coded messages. They weren't directed at us. The packets were intended for a ground station, likely military, somewhere in western Colorado or possibly Nevada. though most of the old Air Force grid there has gone dark. The signals were automated, encrypted, and repeated every 23 minutes on a loop. At first glance, the messages looked like orbital telemetry data. Elevation, speed, heading. But the last block of characters in each packet changed slightly with every loop, and those digits lined up with what looks like a damage report index. Which means someone, somewhere, is still watching the planet from above, and not for weather. These are impact assessments, blast zones, fallout trajectories, firestorm maps. Satellites are still up there, and someone is still feeding them commands. Thomas spent the morning cross-referencing the changing numbers against historic geospatial coordinates. From what we can tell, the signals confirm several new strikes since last night. Add Madrid to the list, add Seoul, add Riyadh, and possibly Dallas. I don't want to report that last one, but the blast readings line up. A friend of mine used to live there, Sam Greer. Former NOAA analyst turned prepper after the pandemic. He stopped answering last night, and all RF traffic out of central Texas has collapsed. Civilian bands are dead, and military isn't even scrambling on fallback. Either the base at Fort Hood is gone or sealed completely. At this point, the United States has taken at least 15 strategic hits on domestic soil, many of them direct. It's no longer just about war. This is extermination. Precision strikes to erase command, infrastructure, and morale. And yet, the country still hasn't fallen. Not completely. Certain voices still come through. Certain places haven't stopped responding. There's a civilian broadcast loop coming out of what used to be NOAA's Boulder facility, rerouted through a subterranean fallback relay in Grand Junction. It's automated, but current. Every 10 minutes, it gives an updated list of active population clusters. Not safe zones, just places where there's still movement, still light, still life. At last check, the list included Missoula, Montana, Cheyenne, Wyoming, Twin Falls, Idaho, Lubbock, Texas, Charleston, West Virginia, and what's left of Boise. If you're within 50 miles of any of those locations and have shelter, stay where you are. Do not go looking for aid camps. Aid camps are no longer functional. Most were bombed, overrun, or abandoned. The best case scenario is to find clean air, secure food, and people who won't shoot you on sight. That's the bar now. Anything more is fantasy. I've heard stories, some true, some not. People being lured into safe zones that turned out to be traps. Armed factions setting up false radio signals. Fake Red Cross locations. People playing God with the desperate. The best defense against lies is your own eyes. If the signal doesn't include verifiable data, skip it. A few hours ago, a signal broke through the noise on a high-frequency band I almost never monitor. It wasn't American. I think it was Norwegian. A woman speaking in English with a strong Scandinavian accent claiming to represent a regional authority called the Northern Continental Assembly. She said that parts of Scandinavia, the Baltic states, and parts of Finland are now operating under independent coordination. Not NATO, not UN, not even under their former governments. Just regional control boards trying to stabilize what little is left. She invited qualified individuals with technical skills to contact them through a burst transmission uplink. Coordinates were given. I don't know if it's real, but someone spent a lot of time setting up the message. The encryption was military grade, and the transmission was clean, strong, consistent, multiband. That's not a basement operation. That's someone with access to infrastructure. Still, for the average person listening to this, none of it helps in the short term. Food, water, shelter. These are the only things that matter. And now, warmth. The nuclear winter has begun early. Last night's temperature drop wasn't just a fluke. Atmospheric pressure maps, what's left of them, show a dip across the Western Hemisphere. Dust is already climbing above 40,000 feet. Solar radiation is reflecting off the ash. Crops in the Midwest, assuming any are still alive, are done. The Canadian wheat belt will follow next. After that, no one eats without stockpiles or violence. I can see it happening already. Tomas was checking the shortwave frequencies when he found a relay out of Kansas City, weak, distorted, but decipherable. The voice said, "We're sealing the perimeter. All non-verified personnel will be turned away. Food is for internal only. Do not approach fence line." Not soldiers, not cops, just people protecting what they have. Barter economies have already collapsed. Now it's tribe or nothing. That's the other shift I'm seeing. Tribalism, makeshift flags, regional oaths, impromptu pledges of loyalty. The national identity is shattering. People are bonding over proximity, not politics. And when that happens, blood becomes currency. In the middle of this, I keep reminding myself why I'm on the air, why I'm talking, why I haven't gone fully silent even though the world might never recover. It's because someone has to tell the truth, not just about where the bombs landed, but about how we fell apart. Not because of nukes, not because of generals or orders or missiles, but because we built a world that couldn't handle the first cut. I've said this before, but it's worth saying again. Radio outlives systems. It doesn't need a government. It doesn't need a login. It needs one voice, one circuit, one antenna, and one reason to keep speaking. This is that reason. Tonight I'll be setting up an auxiliary transmitter using the backup turbine system. The main feed will continue on 7.400 megahertz, but I'll also broadcast on 4 additional rotating frequencies across the night sky window, coordinated via UTC timing. If you're running a band scanner, you'll find me. And if you don't, listen anyway. Somewhere someone will pick up the words and pass them on. Maybe on a cracked cassette deck. Maybe over a campfire. Maybe across a frozen lake, with a string of copper wire and hope. It's noon now, or just past. The light outside is more suggestion than illumination. The cloud ceiling hangs low, unnaturally even, like a lid pressed down over the world. When the wind stirs, it lifts a layer of fine gray ash that clings to everything. There's no scent anymore. No pine, no moisture, no winter frost. Just dust. Cold, irradiated dust. I tried to restart the turbine this morning, but the blades are sticking again. Ash build up in the bearings. I'll need to clean it soon or lose the entire rig. Battery output dropped by 18% overnight, and even though we're cycling load every 2 hours, it's not enough to hold steady. I switched off the interior lighting in all rooms but the comms bay. Thomas and Sophia are helping stretch power where we can. I hadn't planned to share this space with others, but we're managing. Ash is also beginning to interfere with signal integrity. It's coating the guy lines and antenna cable, housing, and I suspect the air's high particulate load is scattering certain frequency bands. VHF clarity is down. HF still works, but range has shortened. Anything above 20 megahertz is barely readable unless boosted. It's not just here. Operators across the band spectrum are reporting increasing trouble with signal clarity and electronic interference. Even insulated, grounded gear is starting to give out. Ash finds its way into ports, vents, joints. It absorbs moisture. It conducts electricity in the worst ways. Equipment built to withstand solar flares and high-altitude EMP is failing. Not from blast, but from filth. That's not even the worst of it. The last functioning repeater in Quebec just went silent. No warning. No burst. Just a dead carrier wave. That means Canada's eastern grid is effectively offline now. What few systems remain are running off diesel gensets and battery banks, if they weren't already cannibalized by their own crews. Further south, I caught word that what's left of the U.S. Northeast has entered a full blackout. All known urban centers between Philadelphia and Boston are either unpowered, evacuated, or burning. New York is gone. Connecticut is underwater from a dam rupture. And in New Jersey, a local militia allegedly seized control of an old FEMA depot and started broadcasting threats toward anyone trying to cross into their resource protection corridor. I didn't believe it at first, but I traced the signal, encrypted but shallow, and it was real. Someone using stolen military radios is now issuing their own emergency directives. No central command, No FEMA, no guard. Just armed locals writing their own orders. The world is turning tribal. Fast. I heard a whisper, just a fragment, from what may be a surviving European relay. Possibly Czech Republic. The accent was Eastern, strained. A woman's voice reading coordinates, repeated twice, then broken up by interference. Thomas thinks she was reciting border positions, new ones. Not diplomatic, but military. Possibly demarcating a seized corridor. The wording was specific. She used the phrase, occupation stabilization zone. I don't like what that implies. I dug deeper. It turns out there are rumors that parts of Eastern Germany have been taken, not destroyed by foreign armored groups, not Russian regulars, not local rebels, something in between. Possibly Wagner remnants or Belarusian units operating under false flags. They've seized infrastructure, power stations, water treatment sites. Then instead of moving on, they stayed. Posted notices, brought in trucks. Civilians are being processed. This is what conquest looks like now. Not through televised shock and awe, not through tanks down boulevards, but through quiet, methodical occupation of broken cities. And through satellites. More satellite transmissions came through during the night. Scrambled, staggered, low priority. This time we managed to catch the tail end of a feed containing imaging data. Thermal mapping overlays. I don't know who sent it, but it included timestamps, location pings, and environmental overlays. 4 primary heat signatures, massive, persistent, non-natural, each located on the ocean. 2 in the Atlantic, 1 in the Indian Ocean, 1 near the Bering Strait. Those are either missile submarines on standby or the remains of destroyed naval vessels releasing core heat. Either way, someone is still watching from above. I need to tell you what we saw last night, though. Around 2 in the morning, a signal broke through the fog. Pure voice, no encryption. Male, older, deep-voiced, and calm. He said he was speaking from the southern Appalachians, near Asheville. He claimed to represent a surviving branch of the original continuity of government program. He didn't say U.S. government. He said, quote, "We are all that remains of what once connected this country. We are not here to rule. We are here to record. And when the ash settles, we will rebuild by remembering." Then he gave coordinates. A dead drop, somewhere in Kentucky. I won't repeat it here. I'm not sure it's safe. I'm not even sure it's real. But the signal was clean. He used the old encryption pattern from Con OP Bluebird. That's not public knowledge. So maybe someone made it out. I don't have time for maybe, though. Power's dropping again. I've got ash build up in the intake. The turbine needs clearing. We've had to switch to manual air cycling 3 times today. Every filter rotation lowers air quality and drains more voltage from the core. Sophia's worried about the food cooler. It's not holding temperature. We've begun moving perishables to the interior wall and wrapping them in blankets to hold chill. It's not much, but it might buy us time. I've also started hearing the first signs of sickness. Coughing, fatigue, some nausea. Could be radiation, but I don't think so. The counters are holding steady. I suspect it's stress. Or something worse. Something fungal. Mold from the ash, maybe? We'll need to clean the filters again tonight. If it's airborne, we'll all be feeling it soon. Despite all of this, we're expanding our broadcast reach. Last night, with Sophia's help, I rewired the auxiliary transmitter and rerouted power through the remaining solar array to boost our output. We now have a backup signal on 6.633 megahertz, operating at 25 watts. It's not much, but it should reach up to 400 miles during the skip window. If you're running a receiver, scan the low bands during the hour after dusk. Listen for 3 short beeps, followed by the phrase, "listening still." That's us. If you pick us up, respond with 5 clicks. Pause, 5 more clicks. No voice needed. Just prove you're there. We've logged 6 responses so far, 1 from Utah, 1 from North Dakota, 1 from somewhere near Thunder Bay. The others we couldn't place, but they're real. I think there are more of us than we know. But time is short. The systems are failing. The world isn't ending in one bang. It's falling apart in pieces. Slowly, painfully, inevitably. Like a machine run too hot for too long. Now the belts are snapping. The wires are burning. And the ash is getting into everything. But we're still here, and I'll keep speaking until the wire goes cold. We lost the sky at dawn. I don't mean clouds. I mean visibility. Total loss. The upper atmosphere is now so saturated with dust and debris that not even satellite band imaging can get a clean shot. I ran checks with Thomas. Every signal we normally bounce off geostationary relays came back fractured. The LEO network is crumbling fast. I suspect multiple kills in orbit, either from direct strikes or debris collisions. We'll never know which. We're blind now. We can only see as far as the next ridge. We'd been pulling a trickle of information from the last working NOAA uplink, but sometime around 4 this morning the orbital return ceased. No packet, no heartbeat, no confirmation pings. The satellite's dead, or the uplink station finally lost power. Either way, that feed's gone. It was the last thing giving us a world picture. The horizon now ends at the treetops. We are alone. We still have shortwave. Still have the analog rigs. The signals don't reach as far, and the skip is messy now. Ionospheric bounce is less predictable with the ash overhead, but it's something. It's how we heard the last military bird before it went cold. Around midnight, a signal broke through on the 8.425 band. Encrypted, but weak. It was a fallback transmission from a satellite, still in polar orbit, an old weather platform that had been repurposed for military observation. It was damaged. The message repeated 3 times, then cut mid-loop. The transmission was broken, but the metadata gave it away. The satellite was watching the Ohio River Valley, specifically a region between Louisville and Cincinnati. The thermal imaging tags in the stream confirmed multiple high-temperature anomalies, larger than standard urban fires. We think we know what that means. Another strike. They're still targeting us, even now. There's no longer any logic to it. The early war was surgical, command nodes, infrastructure, fuel. Now it's patternless, psychological. They're not hitting to destroy what we use. They're hitting to make sure we never use anything again. I had a conversation with Sophia this morning. She asked me if there was a line, a moment when we'd know that civilization was gone. Not just wounded, but finished. I didn't answer at first, but I think I know it now. It's when we stop receiving rescue signals, when even the lies go silent, when no one pretends help is coming anymore. That's today. Nobody's coming, and nobody's left. We're not completely cut off here, not yet. I managed to reboot one of the low-voltage rigs using the auxiliary inverter. Power's weak, but steady. Enough to keep the primary band alive during daylight and cycle to emergency backup after sunset. We're operating on 7.400 megahertz from 0800 to 1700. After that, we switch to 6.633 on low power. If you hear us, click twice. If you can't reply, just listen. We've picked up 2 new signals since yesterday. One from Alaska. One from somewhere deep in northern New Mexico. The Alaska message was garbled, but the operator called himself Delta Kilo 6. He claimed to be part of a maritime research team who took shelter in an abandoned NORPAC weather station west of Kodiak. He said the station was intact, but they were out of rations and had no way to filter the ash. He said, "There are only 4 of us left. Everyone else went outside. They didn't come back." The New Mexico signal was stronger. It came from what the operator called Zone 5. It's not a name I recognize. He sounded young, nervous. Said the camp is inside an old missile silo repurposed as a shelter. His words, "We thought we were lucky. Then the sickness came." He didn't describe it in detail, but what little he did say worried me. Eyes go red, skin hot. You start talking to people that aren't there. We tried isolating them. Then the guards left. Now it's just locked doors and silence. I don't know what's happening in Zone 5. Could be radiation exposure, could be mold spores. could be psychological collapse. But whatever it is, it spread. I considered responding, then I didn't. You start making choices when the power drops. When every transmission costs you food, or light, or warmth. You learn what silence is worth. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do is stay quiet. I'm still documenting. I still keep logs. Tomas helps during second watch, and Sophia tracks water. We boil everything. No more filters, just fire and cloth. I rewired the heater to work in 10-minute bursts, enough to keep our hands from freezing, but not enough to burn through the diesel stores too quickly. This place wasn't meant for a group, it was meant for one. But here we are, 3 people living inside a concrete cube built for a collapse I thought I'd imagined. The funny thing is, we're okay. Not happy, not strong, but okay. We've stopped bleeding power. We've kept our lungs clear. We've made it 6 days since the last known strike in this region. That's a victory now. But it's not going to last. The ash is thickening. You can taste it now, even inside. Filters clog every 3 hours. The turbine won't turn. I'll have to climb the tower again tonight to clean the fins. One slip in that wind and I'll be buried under 100 feet of white powder so fine it suffocates you before you even feel cold. We're rationing everything. No more heating in the sleeping area. We only cook once a day. We've sealed off the north wing of the shelter. It draws too much current. We sleep in the comms bay now, side by side. It's not how I imagine surviving the end of the world, but it's real. If you're hearing this, know this much. There's no cavalry. There's no rescue op waiting to deploy. There's no mass airlift or drone corridor. No signals came through last night. Not a whisper, not a skip, not even the stray electronic groan of a dying repeater. I kept the receiver open until well past 3 in the morning. Nothing. Absolute silence. It's not normal. Even in the worst nights since the first strikes, there was always something. Weak distress calls, automated loops, encrypted bursts that meant someone was still alive somewhere. Last night was different. Last night, the spectrum was dead from bottom to top. I thought maybe it was interference, ash, wind, or more orbital decay. But the sky was still and the local atmospheric pressure had stabilized. The turbine was quiet. Batteries were charging. The rig was functional. It wasn't hardware. It was the world. I sat there in the comms chair, listening to static, marking the seconds between sweeps of the dial. Every now and then, a tickle of hope, some half-formed pattern or harmonic noise, would catch my ear, but it was always just that, noise. Thomas came in around 4. He didn't say anything. Just looked at me, then walked over and opened the stove vent. Sophia stayed asleep wrapped in the thermal blanket. We've learned not to wake each other for silence. After nearly 20 hours without a single signal, I did something I hadn't done since the first week. I prepared the final tape. It's an old habit from my early broadcast days. You make a final tape, something you can trigger with a timer or dead man switch if you die or go off the air permanently. You load it into the backup unit. You set it to cycle. Then you seal the transmitter and let your last words outlive you. Mine was simple, a short summary, a list of cities, a list of frequencies, and one line, this is what was left. I didn't play it, not yet, but it's there, spooling, waiting. Just before I went to bed, something strange happened. At 6:43 a.m., a pulse hit the lower band. Not voice, not code. Just 1 second burst followed by a 10-second delay. Then another burst, and another. The sequence repeated 4 times, then stopped. Then, after a minute of nothing, a voice came through. It was faint, male, young, American accent. This is Echo Ridge Relay 5. We heard you. We have fuel and equipment. Repeat, fuel and equipment. Request rendezvous confirmation. Then nothing. No return frequency, no location. I repeated a reply twice, then boosted to max power. I identified our position in general terms, repeated our band schedule, and gave them a code phrase that would prove they were real. Then I waited. No reply yet, not one. Sophia says it could be bait. Another trap like the safe corridor loop out of eastern Nevada that led 3 dozen survivors into an irradiated pass. She's not wrong. We've seen too many signals turn out to be false hope, or worse, active lures. But this one was different. There was no promise of shelter, no claim of safety, just fuel and equipment and someone who had clearly been listening. We're going to keep monitoring. But for now, I'm still here, still speaking, still transmitting. Thomas and I finally shut off the old antenna tower this morning. It hadn't been producing signal for days, and the ash had eroded the coke's shielding beyond repair. We stripped what copper we could and rerouted the interior relay to a wire rig strung through the tree canopy about 200 feet from the cabin. Range is worse, but noise floor is lower. Less metal, less scatter. He climbed the tree himself, nearly fell once. Sophia had a panic attack watching from the hatch, but he got it done. He's steady. Tougher than he looks. We're a crew now, I guess. The last crew. Outside, the air is thick. The ash comes in waves now. Clumps fall from the sky like snow, but softer. It sticks to branches, fuses with ice, forms gray stalactites that break in the wind and crumble underfoot. The ground is no longer soil, it's powder, and beneath that powder, death. The few remaining reports we've received suggest soil is chemically ruined across broad regions of the Midwest and Europe. Crop failure isn't theoretical anymore. It's confirmed. From Montana to Ukraine, nothing will grow without reclamation, which means food must now come from cans or cold cellars or something worse. I heard a whisper, literally a whisper, from a woman out of Yakutsk. Her voice barely made it through the static. She said, "They've started eating what was stored for animals. We'll eat the hay next." Then she went quiet. I keep thinking about how long we've lasted, months now, maybe more. Time is slippery. No calendars here, just logbooks, sunrise, and battery charge cycles. Every day feels like the last. Every night feels like maybe it was. But this morning, after the burst, after the voice, after the silence returned, I noticed something. Sophia was smiling, just for a moment, a real one. And Thomas asked to double-check the relay logs. He's planning something. He hasn't said what. Hope is the first enemy of the survival, but it's the last part of being human. I'll keep broadcasting. I'll stay on the air. I'll document everything until this transmitter dies or I do. This is not the end, but it may be the end of the beginning. This will be my final broadcast. Not because I'm out of power, not because I'm dead or dying. I'm still breathing, the batteries are still holding, and the rig, though corroded, patched, and barely above room temperature, is working. You're hearing this because I want you to. I've waited weeks for something worth chasing, and this morning at 0500 hours I received it. The signal came through clean, a full burst relay encrypted with a working Con-Alpha checksum layered with both LEO satellite and short-range ground wave redundancy. Not amateur, not improvised. Whoever sent it knew what they were doing. I was able to decrypt it with my last working toolchain. The message was short. Echo Ridge confirmed. You are authorized. Coordinates 40.21, -105.87. Resupply underway. Departure window T-minus 24 hours. One transmission only. No response expected. That's near Trinidad, Colorado. Not far from the Raton Pass. Mountain corridor. Steep, cold, dangerous, but reachable. We sat in silence after decoding it. Tomas leaned against the rig, rubbing ash from his gloves. Sophia didn't speak for 10 minutes. When she did, she asked the same thing I've been asking myself ever since. Is it worth it? It could be bait, could be a trap, could be a drone scan looking for survivors to mark for destruction, could be a dead station already hit, with its last message echoing on an automated loop. We've seen it all, we've lived it. But something about the signal felt different. too clean, too intentional, and not demanding, just a confirmation. The kind of message you send when there is still a chain of command, but no need to explain. It didn't try to lure us, it just told the truth. So I'm going. All of us are, together. We've packed only what matters. The portable rig, the last inverter, 10 sealed food packs, our remaining water tabs, 2 blankets, a single flashlight, and my original receiver. Not the big one, the old handheld I carried the day I built this station. The one with the cracked dial and the half-dead lithium cell. It still works. If you're hearing this, it means I've triggered the final broadcast loop. The rig will remain online until the batteries die. That may be days, maybe more. I've uploaded logs from all transmissions, including known coordinates of fallback relays, verified survivor reports, and fallout drift projections. Everything I had, everything we saw. You'll find these messages repeating every hour on 7.400 megahertz, followed by a 10-minute window of silence. After that, the system will cycle through backup frequencies, hitting 5 bands across the dial. It'll continue this pattern until the power runs out or the antenna falls apart. If no one hears this, that's okay. It still happened. We were here. I've documented the end, not to mourn it, but to give whoever comes next, if anyone comes next, something to build on. A foundation of memory. A pile of gravel from which to pour new concrete. The walk to Echo Ridge will take at least 3 days. Longer if the weather turns. If you hear our signal go dark before then, don't assume the worst. It might just mean we made it. And if we don't, then this voice, this broadcast, this signal in the dark will be the last echo of us. You don't need to know my name. Names died with the cities. All you need to know is that we tried. We didn't give in. We stayed human, even when the world didn't. Maybe you're listening from another cabin, another bunker, another ruin with wires strung across fallen walls and antennas rigged to old plumbing. Maybe you've heard the same silence I have. Then maybe you'll do what I did. Talk, transcribe, remember. Because in the end, it's not the bombs that finish us. It's the forgetting.